to another episode of Cerebral Policy Answers, or Parálisis Cerebral Respuestas. This episode will be in English, but in the coming weeks, I'll be recording some other episodes in Spanish, including with one of the guests that I have today. So thank you for joining us. This episode is a little different from what I've been usually doing, because usually, as you know, everyone that here's the podcast, it's usually centered around something that has to do with CP, cerebral palsy. But this episode, I've been receiving lots of messages, lots of emails, Instagram messages, you name it, about people, parents that are concerned about the Medicaid cuts that are proposed currently and that are moving really fast. So I decided to use this platform to invite two of my guests who work with Disability Rights California, Sabrina Epstein and Vanessa Ochoa. Thank you so much to both of you. They will both be discussing what Medicaid is, how does it impact our families, our communities, and then sharing our own personal experiences about what it means if these cuts really are implemented. So thank you so much to both of you. Whoever wants to start first, I am very, very happy. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us, Azucena. I'm excited to talk about Medicaid with you, and I'm really grateful that you're using your platform and sharing your audience with us to get this important message across today.
Thank you. I'm super excited that you invited us, and I'm always happy to connect with you and just, share what's going on in our day-to-day lives and how how things that are going on in the world are going to affect us personally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that is very scary for me is, I feel like every part of my identity is being attacked. And this legislation, these budget cuts are a direct attack to me and to millions of people and families of those with disabilities. So that's why I invited you both. So whoever wants to start, a lot of us might feel like, what exactly is Medicaid, Medi-Cal? Why is it so important for families, for seniors, for people with disabilities, for children? Why is Medicaid so important?
Sure. This is Sabrina. I can start us off with answering that. Medicaid is a healthcare program that is jointly run by the federal and state governments working together. So funding comes from both the federal government and the state government. Mm-hmm. And here in California, we often hear it called Medi-Cal, which is just California's name for Medicaid. But there are also so many different programs that federal Medicaid dollars are helping to fund here in California. That includes regional centers, which get about a third of their funding from federal Medicaid dollars and serve over 400,000 people with developmental disabilities across the state. That includes IHSS, which is in-home supportive services that we can talk more about later. Mm-hmm. It includes things like dental care, regular health care for kids. It covers about 40% of births are covered by Medicaid. So many people are affected by this spending, and it really provides absolutely essential services to people of all ages with and without disabilities. And I think Vanessa wants to share a little bit about how it affects her family.
Yeah, so just a little bit about me. I'm the mother of two children that are regional center consumers. So they are clients of a regional center. And they receive services for diagnosis of autism. And so I firsthand know what it's like to access these programs. And one of the programs that would affect me personally, and it's very fresh because just recently, my 23-year-old with autism that has limited speech just got dental care done. And for her, any procedure that she needs to get done at the dentist, she needs to be put under anesthetic. Mm-hmm. And that's typically covered under this program. So this is a huge deal. Like we don't really think about what this coverage would do for dental, and for someone that cannot get just a basic cavity fill or a cleaning without being put under anesthetic, they would have to wait like years until they can save up enough money to pay for the anesthetic or find other coverage. And so that, it will affect your medical status, like how you're feeling. And then with people with disabilities and people with autism, if you're having issues in your teeth and you're not able to vocalize that you're having issues, it starts to show in your behavior, in how you react, in sensory, in your noises. And so then that starts to affect your ability to go to school, your ability to go to work, your ability to socialize, your ability to just communicate and live your day-to-day life. So it's just a small part that affects a lot of parts of a daily life, that just because of Medicaid could affect all of these different things.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. In your story, you just explained and showed the far-reaching impacts of just one small cut. In the case of your 23-year-old, having access to dental care, and these are things that we really on a day-to-day basis we really don't think about. But just this is a perfect example of just the far-reaching impacts of if they don't have access. If your child doesn't have access to dental care, how is that going to affect the behavior? How is that going to affect the ability to go to school, to socialize? And that itself will bring other issues, other issues that will probably require another type of specialist or another type of support. And you might not even have that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And in that same line, you mentioned, dental care and just that's just one example. But for you, Sabrina, what are the proposed cuts to Medicaid, and why is it happening now?
So what's going on right now, and this is as of the week of February 24th, is that Congress is considering some major cuts to Medicaid, to the federal dollars that go to states that then get allocated to pay for services like dental care, like having an aide at home to help you get out of bed in the morning, or like going to your primary care appointment. And so right now in Congress, there is a budget resolution which basically allocates how much each of the 13 subcommittees will get to spend, and it has 880 billion, yes, billion with a B, in cuts from the Energy and Commerce Committee, which oversees Medicaid. And so there is just no way for that to happen that doesn't affect everyday people's access to healthcare and other needed services. We don't yet know what the specific ways that the cuts would happen would be. And hopefully the budget resolution doesn't pass. We're not quite there yet, but that's what's being proposed. And one of the things that I want to get across today is that even though we don't know the specifics of the cuts yet, they would affect everyday people's coverage. There's no way for this to happen without it. So there's a lot of different terms that are being thrown around. Block grants is one, per capita caps, work requirements. All of those are cuts to Medicaid, cuts to coverage. And so if this budget resolution passes, then the next step is that Energy and Commerce Committee will have to write up a budget bill that says how they cut $880 billion from these social services. And any of those terms that they use, just know that those are cuts to the services that families like ours need.
Wow. And I actually came across those terms and I didn't understand. I'm like, what does that mean? and I'm like, why is this happening? I studied political science in school, but I'm still struggling to understand these terms that you just mentioned. So thank you for mentioning that. Now, what would this mean? In my understanding, this would affect every single one of us, not just the people who are covered with Medi-Cal, because I think I've come across some individuals, unfortunately, who say, "Oh no, that doesn't affect me because I'm covered by Sharp or Kaiser, or I have private insurance," and it's like, no, this affects everyone. Um, and this is a question that just came up for me: is what happens if the state don't receive that funding? How are they going to cover if they don't receive the funding from the federal government? Like, are they going to have to cut the services altogether? Are they going to have to offer less? What's going to happen?
That's a really good question. We don't know the exact answer to that yet, and
Mhm.
hopefully we don't get to that point. But if we do, just know that we're going to have to fight really hard to make sure these cuts don't happen and that the most vulnerable families are protected, because we can't let Congress pass these and, take money and services from the people who need it most. This is really essential stuff. I also wanted to say to how you said it affects the healthcare system as a whole. It also affects so many families and just people's way of life. One example that we wanted to share is IHSS, in-home supportive services, which almost 600,000 people in California receive, is a way that many family members get paid to take care of another family member or
Mhm.
someone they know. Maybe their neighbor comes over to take care of their grandma.
Mhm.
These are the essential ways that our communities care for each other, and it keeps people in the workforce. It employs a lot of immigrants, a lot of people of color. It's an incredible way to access culturally sensitive and specific services. And Vanessa, do you want to share a little bit more about IHSS?
Yes. So this is IHSS is something that a lot of families have been calling me and texting me and sending me messages about, that they're worried, like, does this Medicaid thing affect our IHSS? And that's something that in our Latinx community is really important, because I mean, I don't know if Azucena, if maybe you can relate, but in my culture, in my family, we have a tradition that our family sticks together, like from when you're born until you're an abuelita. When you're a grandma, you come back and live with your daughter, or with your daughter and your family, or your son and their family. And so we tend to live in like multi-generational homes.
Mhm.
And another part of my culture is that we tend to only ask family to care for our family members, because it's the only people we trust.
Mhm.
It's, we have to ask our tia, or we have to ask our grandma, or
Yeah.
an older sibling of the person with a disability. It's the only way that we feel comfortable
Mhm.
leaving our children with disabilities or adult family members with disabilities. So that tends to be something that I see that's really common in my culture. And so IHSS is something that we tap into in order to continue that,
Mhm.
to be able to rely on family to support our family member, where we know that they're safe in our home, and we feel comfortable, and we get to have language access.
Mhm.
If we only speak Spanish in the home, we can ensure that by hiring a family member to support our family member with a disability. And it just makes it feel safer. Just knowing that it's a family member that's taking care of our person with a disability. And so it's culturally and language access
Mhm.
that could be affected if IHSS is affected. And another part that of IHSS, that if it were to be affected, is IHSS allows people independence. And so what this will do is it takes away that ability to be able to access the community, the church, social gatherings, events,
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
And it's a step in the wrong direction. We're trying to uplift individuals with disabilities. We're trying to show society that people with disabilities have every right to be within our community, to be a part of the workforce, to be a part of our events, to be a part of our community. And this is a step backwards. This is more looking back into institutionalization. And that's not something that I think is where we want to go. And so I do worry a lot about this as a mom with kids with disabilities and an adult with a disability, because my daughter wants to work. She wants to be a part of her community. And if IHSS is cut, that will affect her ability to access what everyone else without a disability can access.
I can relate to that because I come from a Mexican family, and I take care of my parents, and that is just what you do, and you stick together. And we have a hard time trusting people into our homes that we don't know. So IHSS is definitely a way. And when I was younger, I used respite care. My mom used respite care and IHSS for support, in-home support services. Respite as I was growing up, and then as an adult, IHSS, because I have limited dexterity, and fine motor skills are limited, so I need help with around the kitchen. So it's definitely something I have used, and I'm a regional center client, and I get the services, so I am totally in the same boat in terms of the anxiety this produces, right? And the anger and the frustration. And my next question is kind of already answered, but I want people to hear it, to hear the impact. Who stands to be most impacted if these cuts happen?
Families like ours. I mean, I could just say the people that are low income, people that are dependent on these types of programs to just be able to access what people without disabilities access.
Right.
One of the things that I worry about is, my daughter being 23, and she needs a lot of support to be able to access work opportunities. And so if this is a program that is cut, she will not have that opportunity anymore as easily accessible to her.
Right.
So it will be a challenge. So it will affect her ability to independently support herself, which is the goal. The goal is for her to be able to be fully employed, live on her own, have her own apartment, have her own life. But if these things are taken away, it's gonna be a step back. And we're gonna have to find alternatives that are not gonna be as comfortable and not as culturally sensitive. Right. And another part of these situations is a lot of families depend on the income that comes in from IHSS to just be able to keep the household going. Right. And so some folks have to quit their job to stay home and take care of their family member with a disability. So that will take away this option. And so that's going to affect the household income. That's going to affect food. That's going to affect, just everything. It's a domino effect.
Absolutely.
And so we've taken so many steps forward, and this is just, taking a step back.
This is a question particularly for you, Vanessa. You've already vocalized this and shared. Thank you so much for sharing your personal story. Yeah. But at night, when you go to bed and you're with your children and in the quiet of night, how do you feel? What comes to your mind? What emotions come to you if this happens, because I know that when I go to bed, I just feel this sadness because I feel like we are not valued as people with disabilities, and just taking away all these services, all these things that help us, not even get above, but just level the playing field somehow, It's just, I'm so sad, I'm so anxious, I'm so angry. Now, but I don't have children yet. You know, I'm 37. I don't have children. How do you feel as a mom at night when you go to bed?
Well, I'll start off by saying, so I'm a person with lived experience with a mental health disability. So I've lived with depression and anxiety, and a lot of my triggers have to do with my role as a mother, because just growing up in a very traditional Catholic Latinx family, there's a lot of pressure on mothers
Mm.
to just provide everything and just, you know, put yourself on the back burner to make sure your kids have everything.
Yeah.
So when I'm laying down at night, that anxiety is intense.
Wow.
And all I can think about is planning for worst case scenario. And that was before these propositions started coming up, these new ideas, these new cuts that are
Mhm.
being talked about. So right now, it's really elevated. My anxiety is so elevated just because of the uncertainty and just all of the work. So I've been at DRC for almost 14 years.
Wow.
And so it's really heartbreaking to feel that we've made so many strides in the right direction, and then to hit this
Block.
barrier that
Mhm.
is setting us back.
Yeah.
So now I'm on mom plan B mode. So I'm working overdrive in my head at night, thinking, if this does go through, what are my other options? And the
Mm.
options are very limited. So
Wow.
it's really tough, but I lean a lot on my faith. And honestly, a lot of my colleagues here at DRC, their passion for this work
Mhm.
is what drives me, because I know that I'm not alone in this fight. And the power of our stories of people with lived experience, especially people that are intersectional,
Yeah.
because our stories are not heard.
Yeah.
You typically hear the stories of the general people that are affected by these systems,
Right.
but we don't talk about how these cuts are going to affect people that don't speak English as their first language, people that grow up in a multi-generational household, people that are not typically used to using generic resources because they
Mhm.
are not culturally appropriate for us.
Right.
So just all these different situations come up, and it's it's very nerve-wracking, but I am hopeful because I know I'm not doing this by myself. And there's all of these colleagues that I know are personally invested in
Yeah.
fighting this fight and sharing their personal lived experience with disabilities and having family members with disabilities. And I encourage folks out there to share their story, because you, we have no idea that what we go through, others are going through it too,
Right.
until we share it.
Right.
There's this stigma around disability. There's this
Yeah.
belief about, keep it within your own family. It's not something to share, but it's like, no, the more we share, the more we can support each other, the more we can fight this cause and show that it's not just one family that's going through this.
Yeah.
It's a lot of us.
Yeah.
A lot of
Absolutely.
us.
It is our stories that connect us, that inspired us to take collective action and change. And that's why I'm so appreciative of both of you, just being here and sharing your knowledge, your stories. One of the things that I hear, Sabrina, very often is, well, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, this will not impact me, or this doesn't has nothing to do with me. What are some services that Medicaid covers that people might not be aware of, for example?
Sure. So, one thing that people might not know is that Medicaid helps cover special education services in school and other school based health services. So, when we think about mental health for kids, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech language pathologists in schools. Medicaid helps pay for those services, and they are really essential for children with disabilities and for children who just need extra support throughout their day. And one of the types of services that Medicaid helps pay for in schools is one-on-one aids. Vanessa, do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, that's one thing. The first thing that popped into my mind was the importance of having one-to-one personal aids for students in the school setting. I see that as a safety issue. There are kiddos that need that one-to-one, just hand-on hand prompting. To be really specific, I remember there was a case where I helped a mom that was trying to keep her one-on-one aid at school because her son would be sent to the bathroom by himself and he would get into the toilet water. And it's like, that is a safety issue. As a mother, that concerns me tremendously. And so that is why it is so important to have that one-on-one aid with this student to keep them safe, to keep them healthy, make sure they're not putting anything in their mouth they should not, that's going to make them sick. And so these cuts would affect that. Speech therapy, that sounds really simple when you say it. But when you think about it, speech affects every single part of an individual's life. It's communicating their needs. It's communicating when they're not feeling good. It's communicating when they're not feeling safe. And it's also affecting their academics and their ability to learn. It's affecting their social ability to make friends. So their ability to feel good and to feel a part of the school, to feel a part of just the classroom. So all these things, although they sound very simple on paper, they are affecting a kid in such a big way.
Absolutely. Yeah, to add to that, one service that people might not be familiar with is AAC, which stands for Alternative and Augmentative Communication. And it's where someone uses a device or a piece of paper to assist them in communicating. And often a speech language pathologist or an occupational therapist helps them set up a system and learn to use it. It could look like using an app on the iPad to speak. And for people who use AAC, Medicaid is part of what gives them a voice. Absolutely. It's part of what says what they want for breakfast in the morning and how they express no, don't touch me, and how they say what they want to be when they grow up. And personally, that feels like a disastrous thing to cut. Absolutely. People's voices.
My next question is, what is the single biggest risk if these Medicaid cuts happen, and why should everyone, regardless of income, care about this?
Medicaid funds services that no other program funds. That's the big risk here. Home and community-based services are only covered by Medicaid. That's why so many families who also have private insurance, who also have Medicare, need Medicaid as well. And we already don't have enough of these services. It's already hard to access them. Many states have waiting lists. Some programs in California have waiting lists. And this would make it so much worse. This is about people with disabilities' dignity, their ability to get up in the morning and go about their day and have equal access to the world around them, to their communities, their jobs, and their homes. And there's no other program that can step in to fill this gap if Medicaid gets cut. No other program is providing these services to people with disabilities and their families. And I want everyone to know that you never know when you or a loved one might end up needing these services. Disability is a group that we can all enter into at any point in our lives. And hopefully, we all live long enough to grow old and need some help. And so this is about services you may need, your loved one may need, your child, your neighbor, and likely you already know people getting these services. So this affects all of us.
Right, regardless of income. And I came across recently some statistics, and please correct me, both of you, if I'm incorrect, but um, Medicaid covers 1 in 5 people in the US, for example. Um, Also in the US, the enrollment is over 72 million. And in California, Medicaid covers 1/3 of the state's population. Is that correct? Or one
Sounds
third?
right.
Oh my God.
And
One
here's
third.
another one. There's a new study that came out that said 99% of foster youth will receive Medicaid funded services at some point in their childhood. So this is really, not only is it such a big program, but for some of our most vulnerable groups, they are all receiving these services.
Absolutely. So an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. 27% of Californians, according to the statistics I read, use Medicaid. That is incredible. And to your point, Sabrina, there really isn't an actual safety net that would cover the gaps currently. So Californians who are uninsured don't get access to preventative care as much as insured Californians, to my understanding. So imagine adding to that already stress to the state, and having that amount of people who are uninsured. If the safety net itself already currently is not big enough, is not good enough, I can only imagine what would happen if we keep adding numbers. That would be disastrous. And
Exactly.
so here's a question that maybe not a lot of people want to hear the answer to, but I will ask it. Who is set to benefit if these cuts move forward?
Yeah, and we should name it. It's billionaires. Congress's current proposal is taking away money from Medicaid and other essential services to give money to tax cuts to billionaires and the companies that they own, taking away from everyday people who need access to go see their doctor or to get out of bed in the morning or to get out of the house, and instead making the very few, very, very wealthy people even wealthier. And that's not okay.
Absolutely not, because this country is not billionaires and millionaires who just it's I have so much anger because I feel like the current president, whom I will not name because I don't even feel he's worthy of being named, is so detached from the reality, and the people around him are so detached. So to think that this would benefit people who already don't need any more funding, any more money, just makes me angry. But how do you feel, Vanessa? How does this um what emotions does this bring to you?
Well, it really touches on my anxiety, just the uncertainty of not knowing what the future is going to hold for me is it's debilitating. I have to say that when I first heard all of the proposed actions, executive orders that were going to affect families with people with disabilities, and especially intersectional families, you know, being a Mexicana, being the daughter of immigrant parents, it just feels it feels really scary, when it was something that I wasn't worried about for a really long time. And now it feels like I'm back to square one. It's like I had worked through all those triggers, you know, through therapy, medication, and, you know, just support groups. And now it's like all coming back.
Right.
So it's when you're raising kids with disabilities, you want to be able to feel like you have a support system and that everything around you is built to support you. And so right now it's not feeling that way. But like I said, I really lean on folks like you, Azucena, and Sabrina, and staff at DRC and other mom support groups. We connect and we say, you know what, we're not alone. We're all going through this together. And our voices are what are going to make the difference. So I do not feel like I can't do something about it, because of all of the people that I know are here supporting me and my family and are like my family, and just empowering each other to continue the fight.
Right.
And not just saying, okay, which is something that I know personally, I was taught when I was a kid to just say, okay, like, you're taking that away. That's fine. I'll figure it out. But over time, I've learned that these systems, these programs exist for us, for people like us. And so we just need to continue to keep them, fight to keep them.
Absolutely. And in that note, I want to end it by asking you perhaps the most important question of the interview itself is, how can every single person listening to this podcast or seeing it on YouTube, how can we take action? Because as we saw, it impacts all of us, not just a group, all of us. How can we take action? What are some things that DRC is doing? For example, are you offering webinars like on how to craft your story? What are some things that people can do if they want to take action now to share their story? Who do they contact? How do they do it? Just give us some examples.
So right now, as these budget cuts move through Congress, the most important thing that you can do is to call your member of Congress or email them, whichever is more accessible to you, and raise your voice as their constituent and say, you need to protect Medicaid. And members are sharing that stories from constituents are really what matters right now. Anyone can share these facts with them, and lots of professionals are, but you have a story to share, and that makes a difference. This is an uphill battle, but it's one we can win. And we're only going to win it by really leaning into our stories and our authentic narratives as people with disabilities, and why Medicaid is so important to us. I will share there's a couple resources on crafting your story. State Council for Developmental Disabilities is putting together a series of webinars that maybe we can link to.
Absolutely.
And also the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network has some really excellent plain language resources that share what it's like to call Congress, what you can expect on the phone, and what kinds of things to get your point across would be useful in this moment. So we can link to those resources, but really just know there's no like certain fancy keyword you have to say. Just say what matters to you and why these services are essential to your family.
Absolutely. Vanessa, in your community, in the community, I was going to say in your community, but it's our community. What am I talking about? What are you seeing? You're a powerful advocate, as a mom, but also as a person with a disability. What are you seeing?
I see a lot of like myself, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of is how this is going to affect us, like, is this something that I should worry about?
Right.
So just not knowing how we are going to be affected directly, I think, is what I'm seeing the most right now. And so something that's really important to mention is if you have a regional center client or that's a family member, if you get the Medi-Cal through your regional center here in California, you will be affected through this. Yes. And so that's something that I want to really point out to families, because sometimes we don't know the difference between Medicaid and Medi-Cal. And so just pointing out those little differences, it's like, oh, okay, wait, so I do need to speak up on this. This is going to touch me. That's something that will also be affected, if it's cut. Right. And so that affects our daily life. And that is typically families like mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Like ours. Thank you so much to both of you for giving me the time to ask you these questions, and to, just ask the questions that I'm hearing, like you, Vanessa, and I'm sure Sabrina as well. You just, we live and breathe this all the time, and so I felt the need and the responsibility to use my voice, to use my platform to make this interview. So I'm very appreciative of you reaching out to me and answering my emails and making this happen. And I do want to end with some remarks from both of you, but one thing I want to say about our stories is, and I want to say it loud and clear, I am very proud to be a disabled woman. I am very proud to be the daughter of immigrants. I am very proud to speak Spanish. I am very proud of who I am because I contribute a lot to society. And people with disabilities, we're so rich in our diversity and we contribute so much. So our stories deserve to be and seen loud and clear. So in whatever way, if you're listening to this and you have a disability or a daughter or a son, in whatever way you express yourself or they express themselves, whether that is through painting, through written form, through art, through whatever it is, because communication can be anything. Tell your story, reach out, because it's so important. Our stories deserve to be heard because we contribute to this society. We are not less than anyone. So I hope that was loud and clear, and I will say it for as long as I need to, and I will fight for my community for as much as I can and for as long as I'm able to. I want to open it up to either Vanessa or Sabrina to say any ending remarks. Thank you for such an amazing interview.
I don't think I have anything to add to that, Azucena. That was beautiful. And I agree.
Thank you.
This is Vanessa. I just want to add exactly what you said. That is beautiful. And we have to love ourselves and just uplift people with disabilities. As parents, just, remind yourself about your kids and, show them, lead through example of the importance of them speaking up for themselves. Because that's something I also see as a parent, that sometimes parents will say, I'm talking for my daughter. Guess what? Your daughter can talk for herself. Yeah. It may not be like typical kids. It may not be like typical adults, but they can voice what they want. They can voice the impact of things that are going to be happening on them. And you are there to support them and be at their side, not in front of them, but at their side, and support self-advocacy.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. My complete and total admiration to both of you, to the work that you do for our communities, to the knowledge that you share with communities and also with me today. I greatly appreciate it. This will probably the first of many times we see each other. I'm sure we'll cross paths again. It's been an amazing interview. I will make sure to any links that you want me to add to the show notes, Sabrina or Vanessa, please tell me and I will add them to the show notes, and we can, and when people hear the episode, please go to the show notes and I'll have like how to craft your story, how to have access to I think you mentioned the Autistic Network parents resources as well. So any resources that they might have, Vanessa or Sabrina, they will share and I will add to the show notes. So please go to the show notes and you will find them there. Sorry if I repeat myself, but I just want to make sure people go to the right place. Thank you so much. It's been an amazing interview and I really appreciate both of you. I felt like I was at home with both, and I appreciate that you shared your story, Vanessa. It really means a lot. Every single time I have the opportunity to hear people's stories, I really appreciate it because I know it's an act of courage. So thank you. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining me in another episode of the Cerebral Palsy Answers podcast. And remember, if you have any questions regarding cerebral palsy in Spanish or English, please submit your question to cerebralpalsyanswers@gmail.com or head over to my website, www.azucenagarcia.com, and you can submit your question there. Thank you.